introduce yourself and what we're going to talk about today.
Well, thank you so much, June. And thanks everybody for being here. Yeah, I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to do a share screen and I'll tell you just a little bit about my work and background and stuff like that. And yeah, then we'll just dive into all sorts of interesting topics. And I'm going to frame it like, around some of the stuff going on currently. And I'll sort of end with some information about what's going on astrologically. So let me just get that up. Oh, wait. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So I think you have to turn that on for me. Should I try again? I think I got it now. Okay, here we go. All right, I hope everybody can see that clearly. So this is just a little bit about myself and where I got my information. And it's just been sort of a lifelong journey of discovery. I mean, starting from a young age, I was very aware of just my mission, I guess you could say. Just a lot was coming into me that I was trying to sort out, and it was a bit overwhelming because it was very much on a multidimensional level. And I ended up sort of feeling like I was living two lives because it wasn't stuff I could talk to anybody about. And now, of course, these conversations.
Sorry, Laura, it's Amelia. Can I interrupt? Can I ask everybody to mute at their end so that there's no noise disturbing Laura? So every single person mute. And then when it's time for questions, obviously you can unmute for your questions. I just don't like to hear you having all that background noise, Laura. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So I'll save some time and space for some questions. Hopefully it's, but yeah, so life experience and journey, it was just very clear, like, yeah, the downloads were coming into me and I was just, trying to sort out what it was all about. And it has made more and more sense as time has rolled on. Now that I do presentations, I became a public speaker in 2010. I was recruited to go off planet in 2006. And I put that information out in other interviews and videos. And yeah, just paying attention to frequency and how energy works. When I did wilderness courses and my background being wilderness expedition leadership, that's what I was really paying attention to, is how our energy interacts with the outer world and just how our perspective and intention determines what we manifest. And it was just really just more clear in nature than ever. It's similar in the Matrix, but there's so many distortions and interferences and dark technologies that it's just not as clear. I also trained at a Clairvoyant Institute for 2 years, and just lots of realizations along the way about just these dots that are connecting. I've researched whistleblower testimony and cosmic mythology. I do galactic and medical astrology, and have a strong foundation in understanding of Keylontic science. So Ashiana Dien was the first person to come out with the Voyager series, and just the whole science of Keylontics. And then Lisa Renee, energeticsynthesis.com, the pictures that you see of, things like the Tree of Life template and other things that comes from her site. So that's just something to be aware of when you listen to my talk here. So I'm going to start with just what this particular window is all about. So there are natural cycles when the stargates open. It's called the stellar activation cycle. And we're currently in this window that moves in stages. So the first major window was between 2000 and 2017, with a major timeline shift at around 2010. And I'll go into a bit more about that in terms of what changed in the zodiac and what sort of alignments began to come in that sort of proved that there was a timeline shift. And we're still on that timeline. I mean, there's no way to really destroy it, but the false narratives and the overlays of what comes through the media is what sort of distracts us away from it. And of course, the threats of these darker technologies, because they're well aware of our potential to advance as a human race. And so every time we're about to take a huge leap, there's usually something that's waiting in the wings to sabotage it. So anyway, our opportunity to transform and reclaim our lost aspects is at a peak period in this stellar activation cycle. It's the end of an approximate 26,000 year cycle connected to the precession of the equinoxes. And the precession of the equinoxes is used interchangeably to describe the mechanics of the ascension cycle as the evolutionary progression of humanity's consciousness expansion on the earth. So through, the course of this cycle, we integrate different energies, generational eras, zodiac ages, and root race DNA codes. And that's something that we get from one another. So if we're really having an organic and authentic experience, we're able to get upgraded, we're able to, really awaken and reclaim what was lost in these galactic wars, which I'll get into, and how that compromised our DNA and sunk us down into this lower harmonic universe. So as we see, though, all these different waves of energy and cycles, they're very hard to, integrate when we're dealing with just the, dark agendas. And so we got to figure that to a certain degree, the dark polarity, the negative polarity is part of our awakening experience. But there's a certain point when if we don't kind of wake up or get it, the dark technologies can become more and more detrimental. So we have to really know how to utilize our free will in a way that helps us to advance instead of using it to just feed into the programmings and the different tactics being used on us to sabotage our capacity to move into a higher earth energy. I don't know why it's not letting me click. Hold on. It is a Mercury retrograde. Okay. So we'll expect maybe, hopefully not too many disturbances here. So, okay. So starting from like the cradle of Lyra, when the cradle of Lyra was destroyed in the Lyran Wars with the Draconian Orion group, this is when the destruction of the Avatar higher level of consciousness took place. The Orion group are a predator force with a predator mind, which is mainly responsible for creating much of the negative ego in humanity through mind control programming. This makes it hard to achieve healing and integration and unity consciousness. And this is why, everything is so challenging right now because, basically humanity needs to go through a big deprogramming and really needs to understand, the tactics being used to continually conquer and divide us and keep us in a low vibration. Because if we can't break through the threshold of the 3D sort of personality matrix, then we are getting further and further away from being able to integrate our soul matrix. And so we're at a major crossroads when it comes to timelines and when it comes to where we are as a humanity, that we either, take the leap that we need to take or we get hijacked even more so than we already have been. So many levels of mind control for the masses, come through our media, which is just the worst. The medical industry, which, not to say that it's all, negative, but it's pretty darn obvious in the medical industry that there's a particular protocols or methods used to facilitate a cure or healing that actually doesn't really cure or heal. It can be, very detrimental, as we see with cancer treatments. And also the mental health industry just tends to drug people. And so we're not really assisted in the initiations or the awakening process, which illness and adversity can help us to, discover. Instead, the medical industry, depending, of course, what doctor and what, group, but it can, bring a person further away. It doesn't help a person see their full multidimensional self, and is very limited to just the physical. And so there's no real opportunity to understand the root of why a certain illness is present. And so we're just managing symptoms all the time. And that's what the medical industry does. And it's not the fault of, a lot of the doctors or the people that are trained. This has to do with the school systems and the indoctrination into these fields of the educational systems that teachers, end up providing for students. And also, just a lot of the occupations are dealing with false sciences that are part of the reversal sort of system, the anti-life sort of like things that support the digression of the human, not the awakening. And so if we were really working with more advanced individuals in these industries, you know, we would understand that our DNA is not junk. We would understand that we're able to shift from carbon-based to crystalline eventually, and that we're going through an alchemical shift. And we would also know how to work with our physical symptoms and, you know, mental challenges as an awareness of this being an initiation and an opportunity to expand and grow. So shamans understand this, you know, Chinese practitioners and acupuncturists, you know, tend to understand this more holistic approach. And naturopaths, of course, understand the relationship between nutrition and food in the body. And the study of medical astrology really helps one to understand where ancestral patterns and programmings have gotten in the mix, because all the zodiac signs and planets impact or are connected to our organs. So without having this available, we are not getting our needs aren't getting met. So we're kind of pushed into needing to discover these things on our own and sort of, you know, teach ourselves and find self-knowledge and find, you know, other approaches that are going to help us to be healthy and navigate these times and you know, begin to thrive instead of be kind of like locked in this loop. And this is also the way the government model is set up. Basically, it just wants our dependency. And when there's dependency, you know, there's the currency of money exchange, and, you know, but it also siphons our life force and our dreams and our capacity to, you know, manifest to the levels that we're capable of. So awakening has to do with remembering all this and understanding that the mind control and the things that are compromising us are woven into our culture. So we're born into it. It's very hard to all of a sudden snap out of that indoctrination, because it's passed down generation to generation as well. So that's, you know, a part of the challenge is that the control system, you know, is like manifest in the different career options that we have when we go through the school systems. And so all sorts of pioneering people are changing that. Like they might, you know, go into the medical field or become a doctor, and then they recognize this, and then they might expand into the more alternative approach. And then between the two, you know, they're acting as a bridge. So I've noticed a lot of people that are in these industries are in that, you know, awakening, you know, recognizing the force of, you know, you're going to have vaccines and you're going to have to distribute vaccines. They're second guessing and questioning everything. So, you know, the hope is during this period that it'll really catch on to a lot of souls, and people will really begin to shift out of, you know, just operating in the matrix in the way that they have been. So after the partial fall of the Milky Way system from its mother universe, subsequent distortions were created in the structural integrity of the universal time matrix, in which the organic creator codes became twisted, damaged, and reversed. The origination of the fall of humanity began when the organic structures that interconnected the Andromedan and the Milky Way time matrix and the metagalactic core were attacked by black hole entities, many whom joined together later on to form the negative alien agenda. And so between Keylontic Science and Lisa Renee's work, you know, this is a big piece of our galactic history. We're basically in a fallen system. You know, the Milky Way separated from the metagalactic core. And so when we look at the ascension cycle, it's about the reconnection of Andromeda and Milky Way. And that also opens us up to the rest of ourselves, because in this separation, we also lost connection with our galactic chakras, and some of, you know, our connection to the 0 point unified field got compromised, because we've been dealing with, you know, this net, or these, you know, lower creator forces and gods and fallen angelics that have basically, you know, held us kind of captive here. But, you know, we're not victims, but yes, there is victimization, no doubt. But at the end of the day, you know, it's all about returning and reclaiming and understanding, you know, our history. And that's really, you know, hard to, you know, awaken when this stuff has been kept from us. It's not in our history books. It's not something we're taught. So, you know, if we were taught this, it'd be easier to, you know, integrate these energies and memories and awaken them and do the necessary work, you know, as more of a priority, instead of all this other stuff that has taken us away from the real history that has made us who we are today. So basically, when we look at like the black hole entities, we're looking at, you know, like the reptilians, and the grays, you know, and basically my feeling is, because we're in a free will universe, the differentiation of the masculine and feminine and the free will choice of being service to self or service to others, the service to self beings that were, you know, at war with the service to others, began to use their free will to attack the beings and systems that were holding balance, that were holding connection to cosmic natural law, and also the cosmic trinity and 0 point unified field, God source, whatever you want to call it, and also the founder races and the founder flames. So, you know, it's just sort of like what we struggle with as humans. We have a negative, we can slip into our own ego energy and end up attacking the good parts of ourselves or suppressing those parts of ourselves. So when we look at the much larger picture, we have to take it upon ourselves to look at how we are the microcosm of that, and how our own negative ego can be just as detrimental, particularly when it's orientated towards just, you know, obtaining things for the self without looking out for the greater good of self and the collective and the whole. And so, you know, and that's why balancing out the negative positive polarity of service to self and others is something that people talk about a lot, you know, and that's connected to the law of one. And that's about all I'll say on that. But basically it comes down to two different types, and the service to self ones have really gained a strong influence here in the world that we're in. Obviously they are using and abusing humans for their own gain. And a lot of it also is, you know, their own survival, because they've fallen into a vampiric state. And I'll talk about their DNA and what happened. So I'm wondering, it's just not clicking for some reason. Kevin, can you grab me my mouse? Okay, sorry everybody. I'm gonna need my mouse.
Yeah, we can hear it, Laura. It's like, oh, it just moved.
Yeah, okay, good. So by the time I get through this slide, I should have another device that will keep this from happening. Okay, so still here we are. Okay, so we talked about the Lyran system, and that's in the 10, 11, and 12 dimensional energy, higher harmonic universe. The one I'm talking about now is the 5D and a higher earth energy called Tara, where Tiamat existed. A lot of star seeds have memories of being in this higher earth, higher dimension. This is where advanced seedings of humans took place, and also where the original Atlantis and Lemuria existed. And so that was sort of holding the balance of the masculine and feminine. And because of, you know, all this stuff that, you know, ended up, you know, taking place, it compromised this particular, this higher earth that we used to exist upon. So the destruction of advanced civilizations and sacred union caused Tara, where Tiamat existed, in dimensions 4, 5, and 6, to fall into dimensions 1, 2, and 3. And everything drastically changed, and more planets came into the picture too. So this is really the beginnings of when we dropped down into this lower harmonic universe, and the density completely changed, and we, you know, came to this earth. So both Tara and Tiamat exploded, and it took thousands of years for the split to occur. And so two pieces of Tiamat became this current Earth and Maldek. So Maldek was a planet, you know, in this particular Milky Way system, and that ended up exploding. So Tiamat is the exploded planet in 5D, which is the asteroid belt we see between the planets Mars and Jupiter, I believe. And then in the 3D, we have the asteroid belt connected to the exploded planet of Maldek. So that's proof that these planets exploded, because that's what created the asteroid belts. And the asteroids actually have a huge influence over us in a similar way that planets do. So Chiron, for example, is a really powerful asteroid that we all contend with, and that's the wounded healer. And the Chiron part of us is what's looking to sort of overcome a lot of these traumas in our ancient history that has become such a part of our unconscious self that we don't even realize or know that we're carrying some real serious ancient trauma. And so trigger events that they do in the world connected to the false flags we see is to re-trigger those things, so that it's really, really hard to manifest things or create a future we'd like to see, because we're constantly being like jolted. And, you know, memories of, you know, Holocaust, you know, start to come up, exploded planets, catastrophes. And so they do that a lot in movies to keep us sort of in that vibration and to keep us, limited to this timeline. And so 9/11 was a big eye opener for people as far as how they use false flags in order to give us a false sense of fighting a war on terror when those that they encourage you to look up to are actually behind it. But wars throughout our history, the world wars have all been considered false flags. And false flags doesn't mean there aren't victims. False flags, means that we're not getting the full story. And what we're presented with is more of a production, as to why these events are taking place. So the real reason behind the wars is not what we think. The real reason the towers fell is not what, is going to come through in the news. And so, so history is distorted. It's not just rewritten, it's distorted. And there's layers upon layers behind it as to, why these events are taking place. And it's really about this window period we're in right now and for an eventual, total takeover, because they know through the precession of the equinoxes, we're going to have an opportunity to really awaken. This is a prophesized window period. So they've been engineering these false timelines and these false scenarios so that in this window, it's like they can capture us in their net even more. And that's part of, the New World Order agenda to enslave human consciousness. Now, that might sound all freaky, but you can't enslave somebody who's sovereign and who is a free thinker. You just can't enslave them. Energetically, it just doesn't work. There's no consent, there's no agreement. But they can enslave somebody who is, kind of falling for the game. Because as we see with like the virus, and the way people are responding, it's just kind of like, okay, do what you're told. This is what needs to be done, and this is how we're going to solve it. It's like it's cutting a person off from being able to think for themselves. When this is a hugely important initiatory year, and I'll talk about the astrological stuff. So anyway, when all this took place, and take just take with a grain of salt the information. It's really hard to get anything 100% when it comes to a history that has been taken from us. Not everybody sees this the same way, but this is what I feel happened. I've been studying the exploded planets for a really long time, and I've never been able to rest at like anything that made sense. A lot of people have said Tiamat and Maldek are the same, and they absolutely are not, and that I'm certain about. And so for a good decade or so, I have been really intent on trying to, uncover the mysteries of Tiamat and Maldek. So that one sentence was like a huge breakthrough for me, where I was like, yeah, okay, now this makes sense. Looking at the astrology and looking at enough researchers and galactic historians, this is, definitely what I feel happened. So when we sank down into this lower harmonic universe, Tiamat had exploded. Part of it became the earth, part of it became Maldek, and it was holding the masculine and feminine. Maldek was holding the masculine polarity and earth was feminine. So when Maldek exploded, it further compromised our capacity to hold balance. There's a lot of information though about Maldek, and that's it's something I'm not going to totally get into, but it was invaded, by the Draconians, and a lot of people have memories from Maldek, and Mars got compromised, and so the beings start to incarnate into the earth plane, and some pretty dark individuals as well. And the whole time of Atlantis was just a really big time for the dark polarity to gain more power, because these galactic wars ended up stepping down into this lower harmonic universe that we dropped into. So when this happened, we separated from the 7 higher heavens, and we've been locked into the 7 chakra system and patriarchy, blocked from accessing the bridge to the rest of ourselves and unity consciousness. Our 7th chakras have been implanted and spiritual knowledge has been distorted. We are in a time on earth where we can regain this, but we are in a fallen system right now that is being repaired. So I'm trying to get, are you ready? Oh man, sorry everybody. Mercury retrograde. So sometimes it works, sometimes it's just my mouse is, can you guys hold 1 second?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Jeez, I can't even mute it. Okay. Oh. All right. So all good now. So as the new world was forming, the mother arc energy morphed into the physical planet, and this was sort of like an intervention. But because Tiamat exploded, and Tiamat is a Sophionic planet, that explosion led to a portion of the mother energy being damaged, fragmented, split apart, which corresponds with our own personal DNA, because we're connected to this template, of course. So when we look at like Maiden, Mother Crone, and we look at some of the mythologies, and we see like the divine feminine path going into the underworld, and just the whole process of reintegrating fragmented parts, and just some of the mythologies that we see connected to, just many different cultures, you know, like Inanna going through the 7 gates of hell. It's very much about reclaiming that peace that ended up, you know, coming in because when Tiamat exploded, part of it became the earth. So that already made this body a Sophionic planet, but the greater mother arc energy actually morphed into this physical planet to do the repair work of a much, much larger picture connected to the 15-dimensional time matrix. So anyway, this planet was seeded with a 13-dimensional monadic core, and the mother arc connecting us to the Godhead is what, you know, is what this planet's all about. And the stargates, and particularly the 13th gate and the core sun within the earth is that, you know, connection to source energy. So the 13th gateway is actually what links us to the 0-point unified field. It's an aqua ray, and it also connects us with the cosmic trinity. So really, a lot of religions have distorted what we need to get in touch with. Of course, the Christ energy is important, but some say you have to get through Christ to get to God or to get to the kingdom. And it's just kind of like, we need to understand our divine blueprint. We need to understand our divine template of the Christ Sophia. And the story of the goddess energy, the story of this earth has been lost to us. And so we're just given, you know, these patriarchal type religions and distorted teachings that have some good messages, but it doesn't allow us to do the necessary work. It doesn't give us a greater understanding of ourselves and what we're made of, and how we can become Christed beings, and in balance and harmony with, you know, our own inner masculine and feminine, and the mother father arc, the cosmic trinity with the Christ Sophia child. So that's a greater, you know, trinity that we don't obviously, religion doesn't talk about that. All these teachings have been wiped out or distorted. And I'll talk about also some of the tribes and the groups that got, you know, wiped out that held this kind of information. So this is an ascending planet. It's been under attack since the get-go, because it is basically a creation that came about because of the galactic wars. And so more advanced humans were seeded with the DNA to be able to win the war, to be able to hold the override frequency, to conquer, to gain victory over these black hole entities, you know, the reptilians, anything that's service to self and is looking to, you know, enslave humanity. So when we look at like a species, not every being in that particular race is going to necessarily be, you know, service to self. That's why you see a lot of different groups, you know, become aligned with each other that are diverse, but they all have a similar mission and plan. So they, you know, they're not limited to their own race. They basically want to recruit, you know, these different beings in, and they did that a long time ago. And that creates the controller groups and races behind the New World Order agenda. And we've got, you know, groups that are factions of the Anunnaki, the Orion group, and we, you know, think about like the Draco reptilians. They're a part of these fallen angelic groups, and they're kind of working with those fallen angelic groups that hold the agendas. And so to me, it's like, you know, something opened up and this warring race came in. Many talk about the fact that they're not even from this universe, and that they're, you know, they just came in. So that's kind of my theory, is that when there's a wound and it's not being addressed or healed, just like we know in our own physical health, parasitic forces, you know, attack, and it's looking for a host. And so the intelligence of the parasite will do anything for it to have a way to feed. And so when these beings, you know, became compromised and all this stuff, you know, came about, we ended up being like held to a matrix that basically teaches us how to be a great host for a parasitic agenda, service to self. And so a lot of the teachings and a lot of the things that we learn along the way are basically for us to just kind of stay in that mindset. And the level of trickery is unbelievable, but there's always truth like mixed into it all. So if we can just, sort it out and clear out the programmings, what remains we can carry with us as we open up to a better way to utilize those skills, talents, and abilities in the physical world. And then we'll see the world change. But we have to make it a physical way of life. We have to be willing to change our lives in order to break down the matrix. I mean, it requires us to serve it, to be dependent on it. And this is the opportunity we have right now as a humanity. And but they're activating so much fear in people that people can't think straight or even see that as an option. But anyway, there were the seeding of the angelic human lines on Earth, many aspects of the mother, and like the Grail lines, and just the guardian groups, and the crystal kids and the indigo, those that are very aware of their mission coming in. So there's no hierarchy when it comes to being an advanced soul, but there are people with missions, and their mission basically is to activate what's dormant, right? To switch people on, to help them to remember who they are, to help them get in touch with the dormant parts of self. And so it has to start with being aware of the soul, and then being aware of the soul can lead to becoming aware of much more. And when we get the consciousness in the level of awareness that's necessary, then it begins to upgrade our DNA. So a lot have come here on missions to help activate humanity, because we all have the same potential. We all made of the same DNA that's connected to Mother, Father, God. And so using words like that can sometimes, I don't know. I mean, everything is from source. But the difference between humans and these controller groups is that they purposely compromise their DNA. And in purposely compromising their DNA, it allowed a reversal current to be run on the planet. And I'll get into more detail right now about that. So the when the explosion of Tiamat took place and we sunk down into this lower harmonic universe, the Christos Sophia body was split into many negative forms of itself, to which these forms were captured and used by the lower material forces of Satanism and Luciferianism. They call this the Baphomet. The part of the Christos Sophia's fallen consciousness is called the Akamoth. So there's aspects that, of course, are untouchable. But when we look at, this sort of thing, it was the Tiamat Apsu. When Tiamat exploded, it got struck by Marduk. And again, in a free will universe, it's like, okay, the service to self entities really began. I mean, it got so out of control. So because, the planetary bodies are coming from, source energy, this particular aspect, it's like the trauma body. Like we all have a trauma body that gets triggered, right? But we also have our higher self that can help heal us. So there is a trauma connected to this blueprint that we all carry. And so these negative forms that were harnessed were then recreated in falsities, like false teachings and religions. And the mother energy actually was not able to stay morphed into the physical planet. And so the Baphomet is almost a mockery of the mother, because it's in reversals and the mother's not even here. And then it presents us the dark mother through different sort of facades that have some truth to it, but just a partial representation of the feminine, not the full representation of the many aspects of the goddess throughout, history, and Avalon and Lemuria. We get like the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene, and it's just like we have lost a huge amount of all this. So there's a lot of imposters that have done this and have utilized satanic ritual abuse and other things to keep these dark reversals alive. That has nothing to do with these beings, but it has to do with being able to take advantage of a trauma and multiple traumas and catastrophes that took place. So this is sort of a free will adventure, and it's a bit of a, I guess, I don't know if anybody really knew how it was going to, play out because of that ability to choose. But that also is our power, like it's a gift. So the more we can understand the many parts of ourselves and what we're made of, we can utilize the gift of this free will experience, of the gift of ego, to allow it to, serve the highest good of all. So anyway, another portion of her being became the planetary consciousness, though, which is that mother arc aqua ray. But yet another aspect had to come in to collect the parts in order to free sort of the divine feminine from these darker forces. So it's very similar to the mythology of Persephone being abducted by Hades. Very similar, like I said, to the mythology of going through the 7 gates of hell and greeting that dark aspect of self at the bottom of the underworld and then being able to rise back up. So there's many, many, portions or aspects and archetypes of the masculine as well, as we see with Osiris and Set and, Enki and Enlil, even, just like other archetypal energies connected to father, of course, the Luciferian thing. So the mother with her many aspects has been trying to do the repair work because she is holding the intention of the law of unconditional love by coming in and bringing her consciousness into this planet to help souls return home and help them to recover. But a portion of herself also is a part of that. And that's where we are linked in to these archetypes, and they're a part of our soul. They're a part of our divine inheritance. We inherit these things in the same way that we inherit stuff from our own, biological parents, but we're writing, these stories for ourselves right now. And we see these archetypes come up in relationships, in different things, just, in life. And that's where the healing work takes place, is that we're pulling our fragments or our lost aspects out of the underworld so that they cannot be harnessed and controlled anymore. And so that's what we have to do in our life when it comes to our care for our health and our medical, just how we care for our bodies. We need to be sovereign. We need to learn how to heal ourselves. When it comes to our careers, we have to pull pieces of ourselves that are being harnessed and used against us with an outer facade that makes it seem like this is just normal life, right? So we're not going to hear about the Baphomet and satanic ritual abuse when we look at like the Catholic Church, or that there's an aspect of that within, where all the infiltration is taking place. We're not going to hear about that because the outer facade is hiding these things. So when we talk about disclosure, part of disclosure is revealing these crimes against humanity and these practices that have been used to generate these outer facades to hook people in, very well-intentioned people, to hook them in so that they're serving something that is actually running an anti-life current, a reversal current. And so it basically preys upon, children and humans in order to, maintain power to keep that facade alive. And that's in the political realm, governmental structure, religions, not every religion. So it comes down to the individual at the end of the day, instead of these institutions. And so the government structure is changing. I think this administration is different than the typical of the ownership of the right and left in the Republican and Democratic Party, but I'm not going to get into politics. But something different is happening in this particular window. And as we see, the desperation of the dark side is to continue to, create scenarios and trigger events so it can feed on us, so it can like capture us and own us and use that creative energy for its own desired outcome. And anyway, another portion, like I said, of her being became the planetary consciousness, the mother arc, the aqua ray, and another aspect had to come and collect these parts, and that's connected to the Venus archetype. When we look at the Venus transits and the orbit of Venus, that's the part of herself that, her heart, Venus, the planet of love and harmony, the morning and evening star that goes into the underworld and back up again. And just the very orbit and journey of the planet Venus is very much what these archetypes are doing on Earth. And we all experience it because we're all connected to these archetypes. They're a part of us. So we have those underworld journeys. We go through these crises in life. We go through the dark night of the soul. We go through, some of these things to gain sovereignty and also to gain more independence over the patriarchal program. So, anybody who, holds a patriarchal energy that's trying to control or suppress this is unknowingly a part of that archetypal relationship with suppressing the divine feminine. So the male is, of course, healing his own negative ego and programmings in order to embody more of the Christ consciousness. So this is, we're in a massive deprogramming to get to the core archetypes so that we can really do the healing work. And that is actually part of the repair work of creation and how this earth relates to the galactic core. So we're at a window right now where the galactic cores are reconnected and we're beginning to see a much larger picture. So anyway, the Blu-ray consciousness, Mother Arc, and we see Maiden, Mother, Crone, Cosmic Mother are the different just titles, you know, of the archetypes. You know, when we look at the goddess in Avalon, you know, you've got the maiden ones, you know, like Rhiannon was considered more of a maiden, and then like the mother ones would be more like Danu, and then the crone would be more like Hecate and the cosmic mother, you know, Kuan Yin or Sophia, the greater aspects of Sophia. Okay. Oh shoot, why is it going backwards? Sorry, everybody. Okay. Okay, so this is the harmonic universe 5, the cosmic trinity I was talking about. So when we look at the 13th gate, this aqua ray energy that morphed into the physical planet, this is kind of what it describes. So if you see, there's the aqua, the gold, and the magenta. So the aqua represents the wisdom, the gold represents love, magenta the power. So the 13 is the universal to earth core aquamarine. So that morphed into the physical planet. That is the core of the earth. That's why it's a 13D monadic core, but it connects directly with the cosmic trinity and true source energy. So this earth is like a major gateway and connection. I mean, like literally living on this earth and being connected to this earth and just connected to nature is connection to Godhead, is connection to our own soul and sovereign relationship with source. And so this earth like is just holds that consciousness. But again, I'll get into what happened. That energy was not able to maintain itself in the physical plane because of catastrophes and wars that took place with the root races. So the root race of Atlantis and Lemuria are different than the Atlantis and Lemuria in the 5D that I was talking about that kind of exploded. So when we came down into this lower density, root races came about, 7 root races and 5 cloister races. The 5 cloister races represents more star seeds, and 7 root races are the major root races. And the whole idea, you know, like Hyperborea, Polaris, Lemuria, Atlantis, and on, Moravian. The whole idea is that we would have a particular root race tribe that we would be born into, and then with unity consciousness and coming together, we'd be able to switch on the dormant strands, that we all hold pieces of the greater architecture of our DNA. But dropping in this density compromised our DNA, and other things compromised our DNA. And the hope was, or is that we'll be able to switch on each other. And so the starseed mission, it can you know, activate just about anybody, but the root races, you know, we've all needed to come together, and that's why we see genocides and holocausts. They want to wipe out certain root races so that we don't get those strands of DNA, so that we're compromised in this window period. Everything is like all about this particular window period. It's like the showdown end time sort of crossroads for all of us. And so there's been a lot of wars to wipe out certain particular genetic codes so that we wouldn't be able to rebuild. But we still can, regardless, as long as our consciousness can reach those levels, it can switch on what's dormant. So people can help us just because of the energetic exchange, but we can still do it without others. So, you know, we don't want to be like overly thinking that we're at the mercy of the rest of humanity and all the different things that we've gone through. We just need to take the time to just bring more familiarity to the many levels of our DNA, which has now been called junk DNA. So this is all about reclaiming our junk DNA and understanding what it's made of. And this is actually a part of our DNA, this cosmic trinity, 13, 14, and 15. So it's called a founder ray 1, collective body, no time, mother arc, connected to the feline Elohim genetic bases, chakra 12 inches beneath feet. So a lot of people assume chakras, if they're higher in number, must be way above our head, but actually the 13th gate and chakra is below our feet, because it's in the earth core. The next one is universal pale gold. It's 14 dimension. Founder ray 2, collective body, no time. Rishik sun, avian seraphim genetic base, chakra 3 feet above head. And then the 15th, which is the father arc. So you can see the mother, father, and then the 14 is actually the Christ Sophia. And there's a lot more detail to all that, but this is just a bit about it. The 15th universal pale magenta is the father arc, and that's connected to the cetaceans, the whales, and the aquafarians. And the aquafarians are actually able to incarnate now. They've been extinct since the electrical wars. The electrical wars took place when 70 Earth Gaia was like the Titans in the Olympian times. The electrical wars took place because they weren't sure they wanted to seed humans, and it almost wiped out everything. And we never hear about that, right? We didn't learn about that in school. So there's a lot to learn. And so, yeah, the electrical wars, the Aquafarians went extinct after that. And then there was a new seeding that took place. But yeah, it was basically 70 Earth Gaia ended in these, wars, and connected to the root race of Hyperborea and Polaris. So other versions, give this more like of a reality, like the Nag Hammadi says she morphed from a pure energetic state, stellar plasma, into the material body of the earth. Hence her story describes the origins of the earth. So our earth connects us with the Godhead. The mother is an extension of that energy and is the mother of the guardian founder races. And of course, obviously the mother is going to be the mother of everything, including the negative entities in this free will universe. But it's like they've cut themselves off. And so when you cut yourself off and you don't have that direct connect anymore, which was their choice, you can only really vampire to get energy. You've lost that direct connect. Now, because the law of unconditional love is real, they have the opportunity to heal, of course. But, they're so bent on their own survival in a power hungry way that they've not really been willing. But some are like desperate. They want to get out of the cabal. They want to get out of the Illuminati. They want our help. They want our, understanding, because the level of manipulation and mind control and trauma-based mind control and ritual abuse is insane. It's really, really hard to talk about. But I mean, it's like we sort of need to know what we're dealing with. So we as humans are undergoing a slow evolution to reassemble DNA. During the Atlantean cataclysm about 26 to 30,000 years ago, this is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien races, such as the reptilians, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Alpha Draconis, Orion group, Zetas, Greys, and some Nordics. So because we're a replica of the Earth grids, like our DNA and our energy meridians and everything, if that's being controlled on Earth, then it's being controlled in us. And so that's what's been so tough, because we're born into this world, and through osmosis immediately we are, already beginning to get, compromised. And of course, the way we're raised, mostly, people are put in front of the television, and then, we're in the hands of like teachers and outer authority that, don't realize these dark influences and the way the teachings have been altered. And so, none of us can get out of the challenge of needing to wake up, because we're all born with a bit of amnesia. So there's always those times and epiphanies of, oh, wait a second, what the heck's going on here? And then you go down a bunch of rabbit holes, and then we all find each other in the rabbit holes, and it's like, oh my gosh, finally there's other people that are trying to recapture what has been stolen, really. So anyway, after all these cataclysms, the planet Earth tilted on its axis. It damaged all the planetary gates, the planetary grid networks, the portals and stargates on the planet. All the pyramids and ET technology disconnected and went offline. Flooding and cataclysm destroyed the Atlantean colonies and much of the Earth's surface. When the Sumerian Egypt invasion began, this event unplugged human DNA and scrambled the fire letters, and so this blocked multidimensional perception of other timelines and extra-dimensional races. So the Draconian Orion group are also referred to as the Black Suns. So there's a lot of symbology that one will see in relation to, a group or anybody affiliated with the Black Suns. And it has to do with, the alliance with the Draconians, and the Nazis got all enmeshed and all that. Starting off in a more benevolent sort of, the Vril Society and this and that, but there's just darker, things. And some of these beings, feel like, they were overthrown. So they have like vengeance, and they're very revengeful. And so this is where we have to understand our oneness, and that we're all kind of healing different aspects of this greater wound. We don't want to overly align with one group over another. It's really just important to integrate all of it and to be whole and to be sovereign. But, in the awakening process, though, it's good to have, different things that one might explore and learn about. But we have to be very careful of cults that, would want to just kind of take ownership and manipulate us. And, we see that it's rampant in the world. In the larger organizations, a person wouldn't even consider calling it a cult, but it has those kind of practices. I mean, yeah, I could go on about that. So anyway, the Sons of Belial are the other controller group, and they have 11 strand DNA. They compromise their DNA to 11 strand, and they're impacting that particular part of the planet and that Stargate. And so the Draconian Orion group are particularly impacting the 10th gate and want to damage the 12th gate. And so basically the gates are connected to strands of our DNA. It's connected to our galactic chakras. So if they can damage those things, we can't reach those things because basically they put a net and a frequency fence and false teachings to prevent us from being able to access that part of ourselves. So when we become aware of that, we can begin to punch a hole through and regain those aspects of self. Because, you know, it's not as complicated as it all seems. It's the willingness. Once we gain sovereignty in our mental body, there's nothing that we can't do. All this can do is trick, mimic, imitate, and distort in order to fool us into giving our power away. Once we get the game, then, you know, we're able to break free and we're able to reclaim our 12th strand. Anyway, because they compromise their DNA to remain the controllers, they access limited levels of biological immortality through the vampirism and siphoning of other living things, such as the planet Earth. So eventually, you know, I mean, AI has been around for a long time, but this particular timeline and the goal or the hope is to assimilate humans into AI, to separate us from our soul matrix, and to begin to occupy our bodies, basically to run us, so that, you know, and it's like that kind of hive mind mentality where, you know, these particular controller groups are just, you know, we're like even more enslaved, kind of serving the masters. And so AI and transhumanism is very much about convincing us that these are great breakthroughs, convincing us that this is, you know, a great step in, you know, human evolution. So we got to be very careful. Not all technology is bad, of course. We just need the right leaders. We need the right use of technology in a way that preserves the human soul and preserves the treasure of our DNA. So this is the 10-sphere tree of life. And it should have 12 spheres, but that's the draconian 12-sphere artificial tree of life overlay. And they use that to overlay on the earth grids. And that's part of when I was talking about control of the stargates and the earth grids, that's sort of the symbology of the 10 spheres instead of 12 to keep us from accessing those other strands. Because if we can't access the 12th, which is basically the avatar Christ consciousness, then we can't fully connect into the 13, and we can't fully connect to the 0-point unified field. And remember, this is all an internal thing. You know, this is an outer reflection of something that we're all dealing with internally. We all carry a different part of this greater journey, and we're tasked with different missions and different roles, but this is an inward thing that we're reclaiming. But yes, there's always going to be an outer correspondence. So just like like all the organs within our body are inside our body, it also corresponds to planets and things that, you know, I mean, so the outer world, the cosmos and nature are an outer reflection of our organic architecture, whereas the false matrix is only able to be a reflection of our mind control and disconnect from self. And so the toxicity we see in the elements is the result. When we're not connected with ourself and we're in a negative ego construct, that feeds into the toxicity and pollution on the planet. So even if there's a story behind it, it doesn't matter. It's still a part of the metaphorical revealing, you know? So whether the virus is a bioweapon or not doesn't matter. What is it targeting? What is the dark agenda seeking to do in releasing something like this? But then in that same wave of adversity, what is the awakening? What is the flip side of it that actually can serve us? Because we kind of need these events to begin to wake up. And so if we can make the right decisions in the times of adversity and make the right decisions when it comes to our own personal health care, we can, you know, move forward on a really positive timeline. If we allow the fear to get the best of us and we keep giving our power away, you know, there's artificial timelines and you know, the end result is the loss of freedom. So I have total faith that most of us in humanity are going to cross over these obstacles or jump these barriers. But it's just like right in our face right now. It's like really crazy. So the seedings of the root races on this planet have been to reassemble the original DNA and reclaim that which was lost in the Lyran Wars with the Orion group. The 12-tree grid was designed to help reassemble the original avatar DNA of the human being in the lower harmonic universes and reclaim all aspects back to wholeness. That's really why we're here. That is the number one reason, you know, and we have this soul journey. We keep coming back. We're kind of in this time loop, and we're not going to be able to break through the time loop until we break through, you know, the control. And so many souls are able to jump off this wheel, and this is a major time, but this is everything we're, you know, up against. The Nephilim reversal grid, false flag agendas to lower consciousness and create false fake war on terror, 5G, directed energy weapons, pedophilia, you know, human trafficking, satanic ritual abuse, transhumanism, you know, the fact that there's ET government treaties, Luciferian covenants we don't even hear about. I'll be putting out a lot more information about the information I know about the ET government treaties. I do a lot of presentations about those, and there's way more to the picture than what anybody, you know, it's just there's just a lot there and a lot of disinformation, and it gets real confusing. That's why disclosure is so difficult, because it's so hard to sort, you know, things out, because they don't want us to know the agenda, but they know that, you know, there's a lot of obvious signs that there's extraterrestrials, and there's been UFO crashes. There's been people telling their abduction stories and contact stories, you know, and they try and wipe memories, but clearly that just hasn't worked. And so disclosure is really like, you know, all these hidden mechanics behind generating false timelines, but also recognition of the fact that there's benevolent beings that are connected to our higher self and our, you know, higher councils that we come in from on missions. So then there's, you know, the mind control, implants, targeted individuals, brain mapping, the AI, and of course the media distortions. The media distortions are the most important as far as they're concerned. That's why it's such a huge industry, because we have to believe the propaganda. We have to buy into the distortions in order for the rest of these weapons to actually work. If we're sovereign and we're awake and we're empowered, how can a weapon work as well? When we're like sucked into the falsities, you know, the weapons, we don't even notice them, you know, as much. So if you do have a sensitivity to it, it's probably better to have a sensitivity than to not even recognize it. You know, a lot of people are sensitive to the EMFs and this and that, and it's good. We should all be sensitive because we want to, you know, shield and protect as best as we can. But the thing is, if you don't buy into the programming, you're going to be able to neutralize these weapons. You're going to be able to alchemize this stuff. You're going to be able to transform. You're going to be able to move it out of your body. You're going to be making the right choices as far as what you put in your body to mitigate the damage. So, you know, it all looks freaky, but like, I mean, this is just targeting a 3D personality matrix. It's relying on us being like hooked into our ego. And there's nothing wrong with ego, but this isn't a soul-based density as far as the dark agendas are concerned. They don't want that to be. They rely on, you know, our ego, the development of self-esteem. That's where we get targeted. Where our self-worth is. You know, we're taught that, you know, to have self-worth means you know, make a lot of money and you have a great career and you got this and you got that and you got this. And it's just that level of programming that we don't realize, you know, has impacted our sense of identity, which is ego, right? So there's a lot of different levels of ego, but we need our ego to be connected to the rest of ourselves for it to generate these higher dimensions into the physical plane to neutralize all of this and to impact the collective consciousness in a good way. But they just rely on us, you know, being stuck on the television, doing whatever we're told and all that kind of stuff. So, so the media distortions then can also infiltrate movements. So there's nothing wrong with most movements, but they become false when it gets overblown or it's like literally they want to hijack every growth period, right? So right now humanity is going through a growth period connected to the throat chakra because we are dealing with the north and south node, the transiting north and south node, the north node being what we need to integrate as a humanity, being in the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. The south node, which is the what we're drawing upon, which relates to past cycles of history that were, you know, so this is a transit. These aren't planets. This has to do with a much larger picture. The nodal axis of the eclipses touch. I mean, that's what makes an eclipse an eclipse. So the growth period for humanity is the throat chakra, Gemini. What we're learning is the right use of our words, right? So look at the trigger events. People are, you know, arguing and not getting along because these movements are being infected with trigger words. So instead of being able to harmonize together, people are feeling hurt, offended, insulted, or it's getting amped up to where the news is telling you, you know, you should be offended or this or that, or you should feel this way. People are, okay, well, I guess that's, you know, what it is. And people aren't thinking for themselves. So the growth period is that we will think for ourselves and that we will bring in higher energies through our throat chakra, which will begin to create activations. It'll begin to switch people's dormant DNA on. And, you know, that's the whole concept of sound healing, words of power. Our words can make all the difference in the world and transform everything. So this is the growth period. So look at what's being hijacked. We're being ordered to wear masks, which is covering up our mouth. So the very agenda in and of itself is to sabotage an organic growth period. So as long as we can stay in the flow of the organic growth period and stay aligned with it, we're fine. And that's going to help us to see the world, you know, turn into something, you know, better. But, you know, I don't know how it's all going to look. We all have to stick together though. And, you know, we have to remember, you know, our words are really powerful. That is the 5D. It's the 5th chakra. It's connected also to the ether. It's connected to, you know, our capacity to move back into 5D. If we don't get over the mind control, because the thing is, if we're under social engineering and mind control, we spread the mind control virus through our words, because those agendas are distorting our sense of self. And then we speak falsities. We speak things that aren't authentic to ourselves. So if we can't cross that barrier and regain our throat chakra to bring in our authentic truth and our connection to source and our connection to our heart and universal love and wisdom, you know, this is what we're facing right now, is that choice. So it's very obvious a lot of people are biting the bait. And the more they bite the bait, the more in duality they're in, and the easier it is for AI signals to overtake them. And we got to be careful with our phones and our electronics, because those are little weapons. And but again, if we remember the organic growth process, and we work with the throat chakra right now, and you know, that's why it's so important to do, you know, workshops, and, you know, so many roundtables have been happening. People are feeling a big push to get information out, to connect, and to create these greater conversations, knowing that this is a critical time to get over the hump. So masculine and feminine distortions keep us in power struggles and inequality. And it's, you know, it's not like it's all about the personality, but it's about, like, you know, not having access to the greater aspects of self that bring in higher virtues of integrity and compassion and patience and all those kind of things. The distortions of the masculine and feminine can create, you know, sort of the stereotypes of, you know, one being the controller and the other one being, you know, but again, it's not limited to the gender. You know, there's a lot of patriarchal and control freak women, but it's just distortion in general. It doesn't just on the principles of those, just like the I Ching, the creative and receptive, right? So our right and left brain doesn't have to be confused with gender, but it's the electromagnetic, and that's connected to, you know, our DNA. So medical industry, I talked about fake alien invasion. That's a possibility. And Dr. Michael Sala in our workshop yesterday, he was talking about, and I agree, that it might not be an invasion. It might be a alien group saying, hey, we've come to save the day and help with the, you know, virus, and we'll fix this and we'll fix that. And so there are benevolent beings that could potentially do that are real, but we got to be very discerning and be very careful of being duped and tricked, because I mean, we're already seeing that with you know, Fauci with the, you know, vaccine. And I don't want to challenge everybody, you know, I mean, if you're not in agreement to the way that I'm interpreting what's going on currently in the world, then like, there's no one way to be, you know. This might be how I think, but just let this presentation just help you to connect with yourself. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but it's just real obvious that there are those that seem to have the solution that aren't really looking out for us. So we just have to be careful, because they do have advanced technologies, you know. And if there was a group that was really, really benevolent, we would, you know, the reason we have to do this inner work first is so we have the discernment. So a benevolent group, we're going to know it. If we're connected to our own truth and our own heart and soul, we'll just know it. If we're not connected and we're in fear, we're just going to say, we're just going to be in survival, and anything will sound good. So they're trying to get us in the right energy to be able to fool us. But if we can, like, stay clear of being in survival, and we can be in our heart and be in our discernment, you know, we will know the difference between a benevolent being and group and ones that are posing as benevolent but actually aren't. So we got to be careful of that. False ascended masters. I mean, they have these blue beam technologies that can actually, you know, artificial telepathy, stuff like that, new age distortions. We just have to be careful. And the best and most important thing is just be real with yourself. And we're all going through what we have to go through, you know, getting rid of what doesn't serve us. This is the organic process. And most of us are on board with that. But when we look at the masses, that's when, these things, that's more what I'm addressing. It's kind of preaching to the choir with you guys. I know you, but anyway, you know what I mean. So the next level, second wave, pandemic, as we see, the riots, in order to bring us these funded movements to keep us in these trigger events and trigger words and duality. So the duality continues to increase, the disempowerment continues to increase. And basically these are all psyops to divide and conquer us and beat us down into submission. If we get stressed enough, being beaten down into submission is just like really looking way outside of ourselves, for a solution. But people are really are getting way better at seeing through those that aren't looking out for us, because anybody with common sense would easily be able to say, if I need to build my immune system, if I need to protect myself from a virus, wouldn't that come down to lifestyle and nutrition and herbs and, supplements and medicinal mushrooms and plant medicines and, working, on emotional health and mental health? I mean, isn't that going to increase our immunity? So we should be at a stage right now as a humanity where like a mad scientist with a needle is not the answer. Or, a vaccine, that's not the answer, right? So, we have to like look around, there's naturopaths everywhere. There's herbalists, there's herbal stores, there's, so it's really important to load up on stuff that's going to help to protect you, that's going to keep your bloodstream cleared, that's going to help you to move out nanoparticles and heavy metals from your body. And it's just really important that we do that maintenance on a daily basis. Then none of this stuff is anything we need to fear. So problem is there's a lot of people that have not opened their world up to that. They'll only do what the doctor tells them. They'll only take the conventional medical approach. And so this is the hope of humanity right now, is that people will see what is available and they'll see a much larger picture. They'll gravitate towards teachers that are going to, these words, just helpers, reminders, and yeah. So it's just important to, it's not easy to red pill family members, but the one thing that we can do is help them maybe, understand ways to support their physical bodies. Okay, so media has an important role in spinning disinformation and targeting humanity in a mass mind control operation. It is directed psychological and emotional operation used against the public. It intends to incite people into violence and tell you how to think. It's used to derail important facts and cover up the news we need to hear in order to distract us and hook us in. But the beauty is in these times, and just what's always been prevalent, and what the real truth is that cosmic and natural law are encoded with our ability to create alchemy and transformation and the mass healing. They constantly seek to fracture us because they thrive on the negative energy, but it's encoded in this earth. It's encoded in cosmic natural law. It's encoded in our DNA to be able to transform and heal and move way beyond all of this. But if we look at all the different tactics they use, it's crazy. So like Project MK Delta, this was patented in 1960 by this 3-letter organization. And the way it gets transmitted to us is through television, radio antenna, power lines, mattress spring coils, modulation of 60 hertz wiring. And the purpose is programming behavior and attitudes in the general population. The effects are fatigue, mood swings, behavior dysfunction, and criminality. So you better believe it that when we see, things going on those streets, and we see just the madness in the world, that they're using this kind of stuff, programming behavior and attitudes in general population. That's why, we see such big groups of people all in agreement to something, and some that, are more immune to these dark technologies are just like, what the hell is going on? So I could read through all these, but, but yeah, things that, create earthquakes, population programming for sensitized individuals. Yeah, so I mean, you can just sort of read that. Project Trident, electronic directed targeting of individuals or population, crowd dispersion, and others, right? So they actually use that sometimes at events that are very helpful. Like expos or things that, could really help wake up humanity. And a lot of people feel attacked and really weird when they go to these events sometimes, and I've definitely felt it. You can tell that there's something beamed on the event to like affect something, and it's kind of disturbing. But as they might be using these dark technologies, we should be going around erecting like orgonite towers or something to counteract it, or there's different things that we can do but it's going to take a lot of us. I mean, And these are the kind of movements that should be happening. Movements that are based in, you know, offenses, or, I mean, I'm not saying that they aren't important to address, but like, we got to focus on the priority. We gotta really work together. And if we could create like a movement or teams of people to mitigate the effects of 5G, if the, you know, when these towers go up, because they are going up, hopefully not weaponized, because I believe, you know, Trump has enough of a clue, but we need to we need to mitigate all of this. We need to, you know, take down the crimes against humanity, take down these criminals, because they fund these movements, and they're the ones connected to human trafficking and pedophilia. So it's very disturbing to see people get too immersed in these sort of movements without recognizing that, because it's playing on people's wounds and traumas and hopes and dreams. And it's just, you know, it's throwing it into a much lower vibration, which makes it very, very difficult to work together. So another thing, you know, is the fact that pop stars, sports stars, trained assassins, and sex slaves have been in a program by the Project Monarch. It could be best described as a form of structured disassociation and occultic integration in order to compartmentalize the mind into multiple personalities within a systematic framework. During this process, a satanic ritual, usually including Kabbalistic mysticism, is performed with the purpose of attaching a particular demon or group of demons to a corresponding altar. So pop stars, sports stars, people in the entertainment industry, I mean, there's a lot of victims of the Project Monarch out there that they use to influence society. So when we see like all the symbolism in certain like music videos, and we see just a lot in Hollywood, you know, we just, it's obvious, like in the music and entertainment industries, there is symbolism that they use, kind of hiding in plain sight, the fact that a lot of the people in influential positions, in celebrity positions, actually have altars, and people in our politics, right? And the thing is, you can get a very sincere altar. So and that's why, you know, a person might be likable. Like everybody liked Bill Clinton, right? And I don't know about everybody. Well, I think a lot of people didn't like him, but he's got altars, you know? So you can have a very sincere altar that can even pass a lie detector test, right? But then they have other altars that they switch into, and then they're off doing something else, and they're a completely different person. It's really scary. And I've had so many clients that have tried to recover from the, I mean, and it's something that is going to require a whole new level of education to help heal and address. It's way beyond the scope of what we see in psychiatry, or, I mean, it's going to take a whole new level of training to help heal these souls. So Project Monarch is a U.S. Defense Department code name assigned to a subsection of the Central Intelligence Agency's Operation Artichoke, later becoming Project MK Ultra. Then, you know, they're super soldiers. DARPA today has a long-term $3 billion program to help make a metabolically dominant soldier. In other words, the military is studying how to use technology and biology to meld man and machine and transcend the limits of the human body. And it's represented in some movies. You know, they a lot of what's in movies is actually what is actually happening. But they kind of, you know, people, you know, get entertained by it. They don't realize, you know, we're kind of dealing with it. So how do we, you know, deal with this in our world? Well, if we're dealing with something that's programmable, it's also deprogrammable. And there are deprogrammers out there. There needs to be more deprogrammers out there, because basically a person's almost, you know, they're like being remotely operated. It's like, so anyway, don't mean to share. There's going to be really good stuff coming. That is good news as far as all this information. But so the chemtrail agenda, chemtrails seem to be creating a reverse grid to connect us with artificial intelligence rather than the photon belt, waves of love and unity consciousness, and a toric field which would connect to the natural grid lines of Gaia and her vortexes and energy centers, which then connect to our own chakras. So it's all a part of this. So mass biological and mind control devices exist well beyond the technology of implanting tiny physical chips into humans, which accompanied many of the abductions by the Greys and non-benevolent Zetas, and also are an impending application of such electronic devices by the one world government to the population. Even brain signatures radiated by government HARP and Gwen towers are relatively superficial compared with ancient existing global grid systems, which can be used for manipulating the evolution of all life on the planet, including the planet's evolution itself. So Noel Huntley, PhD, who wrote Global Grid Systems and Mass Mind Control, sheds a lot of light on what I was talking about in the beginning of the Earth grids and stargates being controlled, and that is way more of the issue. The HARP, the Gwen, the chemtrails, and everything else are complementary, linking us into this global grid system that basically generates artificial timelines. So after the Atlantean cataclysms, the Grail quest began long before angelic humans were seated on Earth, and it has been the primary theme of motivation behind all of the forbidden and recorded distorted human history. During the 25,500 BC Lucifer rebellion, Anunnaki Luciferians gained partial control over Earth's Templar through a device called the Nibirian Diotic Crystal. And so it's still in operation today and serves a key role in the potential outcome of this window that we're in, a stellar activation cycle, which peaked between 2000 and 2017. They want to destroy Stargate 12. This would cause us to be imprisoned in time, making us unable to ascend. This is the core motivation of their so-called Grail quest. The Nibirian Diotic Crystal Grid checkerboard mutation has reduced human lifespan, chemical DNA, brain function, and blocked race memory since 25,500 BC. So that's Keelantic science. According to my research, the 13th Blu-ray was previously under the control of the Melchizedek hosting of our planet. They became fallen and patriarchal and were highly manipulated by the Orion group. So there were guardian and protectors of the 13th Blu-ray. There were very advanced beings and races that understood the mother energy, the 13th gate. They understood the stargates. They understood the Christ Sophia. They had teachings connected to this, but and the Melchizedeks are still a very high race, but there's fallen aspects to just about every race out there. The Elohim, Seraphim, there's the fallen, energies. This is part of the free will experience. So the fallen groups that were supposed to host this timeline up until now became fallen and patriarchal, and that's why things have been so dark. So it was, under control to the point where it wasn't even here. So since the Sumerian Egypt invasion, the Mother Ark Aqua Blu-ray was not in the Earth core. Hence, the Earth had lost her Mother of God and female Christ Sophianic body principle. So the last 5,500 years have been really, really dark. And without the presence of the mother energy in the core of the planet, it has made it very, very difficult for awakening to happen. But what this window period is about and why it's so prophesized is that the mother energy returns. And the mother energy returned in 2010 to the planet. And that is representative of the sun moving through the 13th sign of Fiacus, which represents the activation of the 13th gate, and also the Venus transits. So, but for the last 5,500 years or so, we've been dealing with the dark reversals, and false religions and everything that has caused a lot of pain in people. And that's even more trauma because we know babies can't thrive without their mother. And so we haven't been able to thrive as a human race because the very consciousness behind the planet wasn't able to fully occupy. But, enough was able to occupy, of course, to be able to maintain ecosystems in the natural order. But as we see, there's been extinctions, and we've seen the slow degradation of the environment and the mistreatment of the environment. So now all that has a chance to regenerate and replenish. And we're a part of that. And that's what our awakening is, because we contribute to the healing of the toxicity of the elements through doing the inner work, because we are elemental. Our DNA is elemental. So without the Mother Ark 13th Gate or female principle able to manifest into form, it became hijacked and hidden, and the 13 families have kept the ritual abuse going to keep the dark reversals alive so that we would not connect to the mother or bring that energy back. The guardian host perspective states that the Baphomet is a satanic field in the earth. This is essentially the satanic ritual abuse of the Holy Mother's Cathar body, holding her hostage by binding her body into the earth through demonic forces to produce the Dark Mother. This is the source of ancient pain held in the planetary body when we lost our true mother, and it's felt greatly in all lineages of the Holy Mother, the Cathar lines, the Mary Magdalene Sophias. So I got a lot more slides, and I know my time's running out. So DNA unplugged. So here's some of the history. DNA damage began about 5,500 years ago when the Babylon Sumer invasion erased DNA race memory, distorted the holographic tree of life, blocked life force and kundalini and the natural flow, and our pineal pineal gland, pituitary, hypothalamus, and thyroid, which is connected to the stargates, all got compromised. Shortened lifespan, damaged immunity, and just continual recycling to astral 4D, scrambled geometric codes in morphogenetic fields, blocked multidimensional perception. And this is when the rewriting of human history really began, and patriarchal domination and enslavement agenda for Earth humans. And so that's when our sciences turned into false sciences. Not to say that every aspect of it is false, but our DNA is not junk. They want us to believe it is, so we're not curious about it.
Hey, Laura, this is June. Do you want
Hi.
to take a quick little break?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So I think we've been slightly over an hour. So if you just want to, if everyone wants to drink water, take a 2 to 3 minute break.
Yes. Okay, I'll put it on mute and I'll be right back.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to chime in and say, if you have any questions, do save them or write them down, and then we'll go over it towards the end during our Q&A.
Just let me know when you're ready for me to go.
Sure, you can get started, Laura.
Oh, really? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. All right. I know this is a lot of information and I'm having kind of a one-way conversation, but anyway, so currently planet Earth's inhabitants are undergoing a war over timelines. The invading forces of the negative alien agenda who use the artificial tree of life as a manifestation grid. Trigger events, again, is part of how they keep us tied into this false grid. And there's been so many grid workers, though, and so many people with benevolent missions that have come and cleared the Earth grids and reset them and like took care of the reversals, that there isn't a whole lot of dark grid activity anymore. So they're really, really grasping at straws. And, you know, this is like, they don't have as much of a hold as they would have hoped. And I think we're way more ahead of where they expected. So we're really actually in better shape than what it looks like when we look out there. But I mean, this is, you know, really just their last attempts to bind us to this, you know, these false dark grids. So artificial timelines have been in the works for 26,000 years. Positive timelines connected with recognizing our divine blueprint and true origins. I mean, that's beyond, I mean, because that's always the truth. I mean, the positive timelines is just simply us recognizing who we truly are and remembering, and then that changes everything. You know, an artificial timeline is exactly what it is. It's artificial, it's false, it's tricking us, it's fooling us. So the more we get to know ourselves, the more inner work we do, the more we can see through the lies, and that's going to protect us. It's similar to like when we've dated enough or experienced enough relationships, gone through enough breakups, maybe been with enough kind of narcissistic types or people with, you know, eventually it's just like you know how to spot it, you know how to protect yourself. So, you know, that's kind of been the training ground for us as humans, is that we learn, you know, how to recognize the falsities. And the positive timeline is absolutely, you know, not, you know, a comfortable ride, but, you know, these growth periods are really helping us to be the fullness of ourself. I mean, we're reclaiming treasures, we're reclaiming our greater gifts. So we have to encourage people to stay in alignment with that, because they're just, the more souls or the more energies they steal, the more, because basically we're the battery behind the artificial timelines. That's why they siphon our energy. They have these dark technologies I've been talking about are used to siphon us, siphon our life force through the implants and other things. So organic ascension, natural stargates opening, expansion, upgrades for our DNA, stellar activation cycle window period is our opportunity to get fully anchored on this path, to avoid future repercussions that come from being immersed in the matrix. Much of the benevolent ET visitations have to do with correcting this, but some are not, and they are part of the negative ET agenda. I was visited by a race of ETs that helped me understand this when I was a kid. It was like preparing me, but it wasn't like I was having a lot of contact. It was more in a dream, and it was a very luminous group. I believe they were Arcturian, but they were helping me to understand timelines. And because I was recruited to go off planet, that would have been a very different timeline than the one I'm on. And a lot of it was in the event of cataclysms, but I was very suspect to the fact that it had been infiltrated, and it wasn't about protecting the human genome in the event of a disaster. It seemed to be, you know, they had their hands on dark weaponry and technology that could induce disasters and create sort of a new world order. And there's too many red flags. But anyway, that's a whole nother presentation. Catastrophic timeline. Negative ETs who have been manipulating the human world of affairs for thousands of years since the Atlantean cataclysm for their own purposes. They compromised their DNA on purpose and manipulated ours. Black Ops whistleblower testimonies reveal that the looking glass technology and time travel has been used by the secret government elite for years to change and rewrite history so that it follows their desired paths and reaches their desired outcomes. Many visiting races have warned us about the implications of using those technologies. So this is sort of, you know, I mean, look at the difference. The organic timeline, that's a 12 strand DNA template. And then you see the fall of Lyra, and that's when it all began. And then the 10D base distortion, which is the artificial grid, the AI timeline. So there's the organic timeline, the AI timeline. So the phantom matrix overlay, AI timeline. So a phantom matrix overlay is the false matrix, is the system that we are born into, that we're all working to awaken from. And if you look, it says Kabbalah, Saturn construct, 10D base tech. So we're working with the planet Saturn right now. There's nothing wrong with the planet Saturn. When we look at the higher octaves, every planet has sort of a shadow side, but Saturn just has quite a story, and that's why Saturn has been so compromised. So if you have a lot of Capricorn or Saturn in your chart, it doesn't mean that you're connected into the dark side of Saturn. Saturn connects with people that gain self-mastery, that become teachers and masters. But it's the trials and tribulations that we have to face. It's getting over the controller groups that allows us to stand in that. But, you know, the dark controllers, though, don't want us to get to that, so that they don't want us to vibrate at a Saturn level, because they want to be the controllers. So they try and keep us enslaved. So that's the dark element of Saturn, which is connected to materialism and like the devil energy, right? But the higher octave of Saturn is a whole nother thing. And this is what we're all challenged with. So people with a lot of Capricorn and Saturn have amazing missions to overcome the dark side of how Saturn has been used with the Saturn moon matrix. So artificial intelligence systems have been designed and weaponized, specialized for emotional and ultimately spiritual harassment. This is so that the emotional and spiritual energies get lowered to the level that a machine can entrain, follow, mimic, match, record, modify, and replicate that energetic blueprint. If our consciousness is above this and not in the programming, we aren't as impacted. So again, it's the programming that we have to be careful of. Everything else falls into place when we just can just not be programmed. So our consciousness is so powerful. We have a creative imagination, and they don't. They can only mimic and imitate and lie and cheat us. But we have a creative imagination that can generate our reality into the physical plane. This overlay, though, has taught us that we can't, and we've been indoctrinated into forgetting who we really are, as I have said. I know I kind of repeat myself, but this is how the DNA is broken up. The lower strands 1, 2, and 3 is the 3D personality matrix Earth. Then we have to kind of cross through the veil, go through the death, rebirth, transformation. But that's usually sabotage, like we're seeing in the world with trigger events, right? So we have a conjunction with Pluto and Saturn that took place, and it's still very close, and Jupiter's involved, and it represents a paradigm shift for the whole of humanity. And this is a huge opportunity for us to let go of the old paradigm. And this is why they're trying to sabotage in the timing of, the virus and everything. I mean, they have a mapped out plan. This isn't just a random thing. So anyway, we have to break through that veil. We have to do that through going into the dark night of the soul. And then we begin to move back into the soul matrix. And a lot of us are already in the soul matrix. A lot of us are in the avatar matrix, in our consciousness, right? But we want our physical to follow. So we have to be consistent enough for our physical body to get the upgrades. But if we're sharing a lower density and we're around a lot of beings that are vibrating, at a lesser amount, it's hard to hold a completely different energy in a world that is kind of still in this 3D. So this is an opportunity for the whole planet. Even though a lot of us have already sort of ascended way beyond this and we're born ascended beyond this. I mean, the soul matrix isn't a tough one for a lot of us. That's where we find our soulmates. That's where we find our soul family, our soul group. That's where we, begin to pay attention to our own creativity and authenticity and truth. And so anyway, that's part of our 4, 5, and 6 strands, also our chakra system. And these are, but events took place in these densities that we used to exist upon. And we're rebuilding our DNA so that we can return to these higher earth energies. Then we got the monad matrix, which is Gaia. The Orion wars influenced and digressed it. Electrical wars, disagreements over reseeding humans. The Titans and Olympian wars. 7, 8, and 9. 7, 8, and 9 is where in our chakra system, we begin to activate our infinity spiral. Then there's the Avatar matrix, the Lyra, where the Lyran wars and explosions happened. And they're trying to damage those gates so that we never reach that. Because once we reach that, it purifies everything else and we become restored beings. So the human body and the earth body are very similar, right? So if they affect the gates and the grids on earth, it affects us, like I said. So it was the emphasis of ego that led to the first fall in this free will universe. Ego substance is different than the spiritual worlds. Soul is what we come here to experience on our journey of free will, as it is what enables our alchemy and return home. Negative emotions, when reversed and covered with ego mask, when false identities, are the toxicity of the 4 elements. And when we balance them with the inner masculine and feminine, we actually access the healing rays of creation, the infinite life force and light source of all that is, and it purifies the earth and the elements and us, and it upgrades our DNA. So the ego masks are the false personas and subpersonalities. And now look, in a time where we can drop that and we're ready for this next sort of cycle, with the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, we're being forced to wear masks. So anyway, the 0-point unified field, which acts as a neutron window to Andromeda and the rest of ourselves, is, this purifying agent. It is available to us right now, though, is the thing. So regardless of what they say, the more of us that can be aligned with this and remember this, the better off. So Tree of Knowledge is the experience that we've had of duality, our DNA dumbed down, duality lessons, sexual energy integration we've needed with higher self. Those are big lessons. Obtain self-knowledge and eventually lift the veil of the demiurge. The dark teacher is like the shadow work. The zodiac is like the map that helps us to understand what we need to look at and what we need to learn. And reincarnation is the trial and error to awaken to the divine spark within. To then come into balance and restore the true Tree of Life template, which restores our 12-strand DNA, connects us with the cosmic trinity, 13, 14, 15, the 13 being the core, the earth, the mother, helps us to purify our negative ego. And it's all about the sacred union, true biological immortality, and all that. So the grids of the earth are connected to the platonic solids, because everything in nature is. You got the octahedron, which is air, tetrahedron, fire, icosahedron's water, hexahedron, earth, and the dodecahedron, time and space, which is actually the ether. This completes the global grid. The reversal 55 and dodecahedron reversals, though, make up the dark grids, and that's the 5th element. That is the ether. And so when we look at the inverted pentagram, which is the 5th element going into the ground, because the 5th element, when it's right side up, that represents ether. When it goes into the ground, which is the symbol of, they use that symbology in Satanism of the inverted pentagram. And that's actually what has taken place in the earth grids, that they put reversal codes in so that we couldn't access the ether. The Aquaway mother energy hasn't been here, and she's connected to the quintessence ether. And so without the mother energy being there and the dark mother reversals, yeah, that's compromised our DNA. And this is where we're able to heal our DNA, is to just acknowledge and reconnect. The DNA proteins, the nitrogenous base is made up of nucleic acids, cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine. Metaphysically, each of these nucleic acids is connected to the elemental substance of the planet as air, water, fire, earth. When we pollute these 4 elements on the earth, we pollute the corresponding nucleic acid in our DNA. So this is how, I mean, we're elemental. Everything about the outer elements has to do with us. What we see in the outer world and in the collective, you know, as far as, I mean, this is where the inner work comes in. But to destroy the potential of running the magnetic sound frequency of Sophia, the 5th element quintessence, we have had dramas which are being used as a setup to replay the Holocaust of the Christ Templar timelines. This is a part of the reversal tactics. Same with imposters and false teachings. These timelines were important events to destroy Christ Sophia and turn her negative form into the Baphomet, the dark satanic mother buried in the bowels of the earth. The inverted pentagram is a symbol of this. So there was an aggressive campaign to target and kill the original Christ Templars in an attempt to extinguish all records of the Essenes, Law of One, the Christ Sophia, the Mother Ark as the Holy Spirit, and the female principle's equal role to access Christ consciousness, the true wisdom and spiritual knowledge of the universe. And that's Lisa Renee. RNA's primary responsibility is to make proteins according to the instruction sets encoded within a cell's DNA. However, in RNA, the nitrogenous base is made up of the nucleic acids and their connection to the elements, which I mentioned. But in both DNA and RNA, the mitochondrial DNA serves as the 5th principle. This represents the element of cosmic ether, which is sourced only from the mother. Thus, through the mitochondrial DNA damage, humanity is grossly addicted to consuming everything in the external world to fill this energy and void within our cells. So the 5th element, the ether, has been damaged and put in reversal codes on Earth. It's damaged the mitochondrial DNA. And so because we're born with that, we don't have that direct connect. So we're grabbing at anything to fill that void. But now that's healing. So the reason there's a huge transformation happening is because the mother energy is returned and the ether is now available. The 13th sign of Fiacus is ruled by ether. So I mean, everything is lining up to prove that this shift time is a reconnection with that, which allows our DNA to heal, allows the purifying agent to come in, and allows us to disconnect from the matrix and not be so horribly addicted to, television, I mean, certain foods, you know the list, money related things that are not necessary. But it's all about finding a balance with it. It's not like, we can change the way we relate to currency, and then we'll move beyond the money system eventually. I mean, the earth is abundant. We're going to access things and materialize things because our higher abilities, we won't need the money system because we'll just be manifesting stuff. I mean, higher abilities, like, make it so we don't need the system at all. I mean, that's the overlay. So anyway, controller programs is a term used to describe multiple layers of victimizer mind control software that are used to psychologically and emotionally program humanity to think thoughts of lust, violence, and hatred, and to believe the archonic deception behaviors, fear-based control belief systems, and convince people it's a normal way of life. So I've talked a lot about these technologies, so I'm just going to say just a few words. But basically, once a person becomes addicted to the bait that's presented in all forms of manipulation and deception, the architecture of this control system hooks into you and takes your vital force. This is what feeds the technologies, and it goes off planet as well. So, this is behind how artificial timelines are generated and how they keep a false reality alive. Because as long as we're giving it energy, as long as we're giving it our belief, as long as we're giving it our dream substance, and it infects our creative channels in order to steal that dream substance and give us a reality in return that is more of a nightmare, we're not going to be able to break through. So, and because, there's celebrity cloning and psychological manipulation, and that's real. This extended from Project MK Ultra. Then there's the Project Monarch, which I talked about before, which is ritual trauma-based mind control and abuse that is extended to the children of certain bloodline families and ultimately the future celebrities as children. Then there's Operation Mockingbird, which is a long-term manipulation of the public mind through the media, via celebrities, news, movies, music, and general entertainment. As you see with some of the things being presented, you'll see like a Lady Gaga standing behind and supporting it, or you'll see celebrities, you know, promoting it. And there are a lot of Project Monarch celebrities. So through this, the population can be swayed to accept certain ideals like spiritually degrading and hypersexualizing children. This is because the plan is to create a new world order system where pedophilia is accepted. And I don't think anybody is going to allow that. I mean, the mass, even under, you know, further mind control, I cannot imagine that this will be allowed at all. I think people are just going to be outraged. I don't know how they plan on succeeding in being able to normalize pedophilia. But the thing is, there isn't enough outrage. So we see these dark technologies that can promote a response to a movement, and we can see outrage and people going haywire, but yet we hear about pedophilia and human trafficking connected to people that are still walking around and are still holding positions of power, and we don't see outrage. So the amount of technological control over the way that humans respond to events is enormous, because where's the outrage connected to human trafficking and, you know, celebrities linked to raping children? Anyway, it's because they've idolized, they've put these people on pedestals. So anyway, infected creative channels, these are just some. So the first rule of Satanism is the law of reversal. Baphomet was designed as an intentional Antichrist Sophia emanation used to pervert hierogamic union and intersacred marriage through sexual energy harvesting and exploitation of human beings. Baphomet rituals were spread on the earth through a secret pact of blasphemy and sacrilege designed to utterly destroy the Christ Sophia architecture. True natural and cosmic law in its organic flow is the law of unconditional love. And the law of unconditional love is going to remind us to forgive ourselves, to forgive each other, and begin to step into these higher spiritual principles, which will ignite in our being and in our body and help us to unhook from the vampiric system that utilizes this. The lunar matrix is also another alien structure that transmits mind control programs into the Earth's magnetic field and perpetuates spiritually abusive belief systems into the subconscious layers of the masses. This originates from non-humans and is alien-based technology used to enforce the main goals of the archonic deception strategy. So here's Fiona Barnett. If you've heard of her, she's a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, and she's called out her pedophile abusers. And there's some stuff that she's shared, and it's very, very disturbing. If you are able to watch again and you want to, look on this slide, I'm not going to read it out loud, but it's what is behind this cult, how they think. And this was a quote from her and what she experienced. So this is just sort of like, just a recap of these kind of entities and beings and how they use humans as hosts and how they want to assimilate us into AI to begin to use our bodies as hosts, because they want hosts. That's it. They just want, they want a vessel to occupy, and they want to kick us out. They want to kick our soul out. So Saturn's black cube holds a massive tank that acts as a harvesting station for blood sacrifice from human beings in any way imaginable, whether through wars, rituals, crucifixion, martyrdom, suicide. This makes it obvious why Saturn has been long associated with an assortment of blood-worshipping cults. So a cataclysmic event occurred, and it darkened Saturn. So we talked about the explosion of Maldek and the Atlantean cataclysms. These are the type of events that eventually turned Saturn dark, and the rulership on Earth became very, very dark. And in occult circles, it's called the Old Sun, the Dark Sun, or the Dark Lord. And it may be that all or most of the ancient sun gods are gods of the Saturn sun. So not all archetypes connected with this are going to, be dark, but it's very clear that it's utilized in an incredibly dark way. But the thing is, this Earth has a diamond heart, right? So if Saturn has a black cube and the Earth has a diamond heart, it's like we heal Saturn through, connecting with this and overcoming this, control. And then we set Saturn free, which is connected to female archetypes as well. So Saturn has been considered the enslavement of the goddess in some circles too, right? So it just, It's part of that Baphomet and feeding the Baphomet and the Saturn, you kind of like see where that takes you. But anyway, I'm just going to read the first line because I know I'm short of time. But the black cube matrix is at the core of the planet Saturn, according to certain sources. It siphons life force from living systems and beings and routes it back into the black system. But the Earth holds a diamond heart, and we are all aligned. We're aligned with the galactic plane right now. We're able to activate our inner divine blueprint and generate a lot of pure light into the world. So, and that doesn't discount the integration of polarity with the dark being the creative cauldron and birthing center, like the soil, like the mother womb, it births life. So, you know, connecting with the Earth is so important right now because basically the alignments happening in this particular period with Saturn and Pluto are allowing us to master the dark forces of Saturn in ourselves and how we allow ourselves to be fed upon. So we're not victims here. We have to look at what these relationships are and begin to cut the cords. And then we overcome these trials and tribulations that we're experiencing. And then we're in self-mastery. And then we can look back at this crazy Earth experience and be like, can you believe how crazy that was? But you know, we want to be like spiritual athletes and look at what's going on in the world right now as opportunities and obstacles to gain strength, to gain clarity, to regain, you know, the rest of our DNA. Because the rings of Saturn, according to David Icke, are a massive broadcast system broadcasting a fake reality. DNA holds all the information we will ever need to build and maintain the human body. Researchers at Boston University and Harvard Medical School studied that 98% of our DNA that remains unable to be decoded is called trash DNA. That's a lot, 98%. So we got to get out of this false reality. But, you know, people are merged through nanites in the air, food, and water, and a supercomputer system sends waves of desires out at just the right moment to influence the masses in coordination with the media, scalar and weather events, and natural biological cycles. So it's utilizing the biological, and AI is an imitation, right? So when we see the big waves of, like, you know, events taking place on the planet, it is connected to this greater AI system. And it all sounds pretty scary. So I'm going to kind of get to the good news, better news. I mean, I could just go on. But this is important. With the current application of polarities, people controlled by AI signals are made more obvious to those who are not running AI signals. You know, a lot of us have immunity, right? But it doesn't mean that it's easy. It is possible to clear the AI signal from your nervous system, brain, and body when you become aware of it. However, one must change their consciousness to elevate one's frequency in order to keep the AI signal from returning. Because it's going to, you know, it's going to be a constant. So we have to do constant energy maintenance. AI signals are basically reversal engineers that generate artificial timelines, and it's our own unconsciousness and disempowerment, really. So forgiveness and compassion will help us to win this war, and the war is won within ourselves because it's a war on consciousness. Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead. Don't think that you're really missing anything. I already talked about the inverted pentagram. So in order to create correction, we have to go in sort of the underworld, dark night of the soul, and the Venus transits are already correcting this on a cosmic level, right? So we have to know that ascension is a cosmic and earthly event. It is based in these alignments. It's based on where we are currently in this 26,000 year cycle. So we have been in the process of creating, you know, soul alchemy. We are born into a huge wound, and we're each called to come and heal a portion of this greater wound connected to our galactic history. So the storylines that we're given and the storylines we live out are there to help us to actually wake up and heal personally and things way beyond ourselves. If we get too attached to the storylines and we take it too personally, we forget the larger mission. So I talked about the diamond heart. So the Melchizedeks are the genetic hosting race of the Earth's ascension for the last 35,000 years. As of 2009, 2012, our planet went beyond that to prepare for the 13th gate pillar of Mother Ark and the crystal star hosting, the return of the goddess, the override frequency. So that whole big chunk of history where we did not have our mother energy in 2009, 2012, the mother energy returned. And Ophiuchus is proof of that. And it's the 13th sign. And themes connected to it are creatrix connectivity, pure transparent crystalline light, divine mother, the cleansing power of cosmic love, recoding DNA, aligning to the cosmic heart of Lyra and Andromedan universal center. So that's that merging of Milky Way and Andromeda. Ophiuchus is connected to the asteroid Chiron, divine fire water, which is ether, and opening of the Golden Gate. So the sun started to move through this in 2010. So this phase is the solar alignment with the cosmic ether. And this is the thing that's been missing. The inverted pentagram was, you know, and all the stuff feeding Saturn. It's at the core, the cosmic ether, which is at the core of the galactic center. So we're in alignment with that. And this sign represents the pouring of healing spiritual waters into the earth and humanity from Mother God. Previously, these waters were corrupted by entrapping the Mother Principle and gold ray seraphim on earth, as I, was talking about. Chiron helps us to understand our mission through wounds, challenges, and afflictions, shows us what we are missing and longing for the most. Then we're on a path of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge is about gaining self-knowledge so we can begin to switch on the dormant strands. So we win the war within. We need to overcome these anti-life negative ego constructs, overcoming amnesia. And so basically, this is just about how the archonic matrix is an imitation of the original creation. We just need to detach from it. I'm not going to read all of that. I hate to rush, but I want to respect everybody's time. Astrology is in the current times is labeled as a pseudoscience, and that is used to discredit its validity and purpose in studying the laws of structure, to keep humanity ignorant of the study of the astronomical patterns, which inform our personality through many different forces of consciousness influences. The proper use of it can help us with deeper knowledge and awareness of how these patterns impact us. 3D human consciousness goes on autopilot when we're not informed and we don't have, self-knowledge. And so uninformed of the massive forces and influences to which we are exposed every day is when we're unconscious and in autopilot. So astrology clearly helps us to get to know ourselves better. One of the big things, though, is integrating polarity. So the oppositions, just look at a zodiac and, it's like Aries and Libra need to be integrated. The air and water, the fire and air are opposite each other. The water and earth are opposite each other. So, it's like we're here to integrate polarity and to learn, we are the whole wheel. We might be born with a predominance in a certain house or have a bunch of different, things going on in our chart that makes us unique, but we really are the whole zodiac. And so we're here to help switch the rest of ourselves on by getting to know one another. And this helps us to heal our bodies because all these signs are connected to parts of our body. And you see Ophiuchus at the bottom, fetal cells, tailbone, cranial sacral axis, solar sacrum, kundalini, amrita, the Leyden gland, base of brain, the golden chalice, lunar to solar transfiguration. So this is proof that we are starting to activate and our physical bodies are going to go through massive changes. And that's going to affect every other organ of our body. And just like the 13th gate, which is located in Australia at Uluru, that stargate, when it's activating, impacts all the other stargates on the planet in a major, major way. So, we want to just recognize this. And, it's good to do things like fluoride cleansing and, just preparing the body, paying attention to our frequency, knowing that we calibrate real low when we're in shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. And that, when we have like courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, we're vibrating higher. But the thing is, we're not going to be able to avoid these lesser places, right? So we got to accept it and bring it love when we go into those zones so that we can get high again. Because we can't just remain in those high levels. We're all going to run into fear and anger and these other things. But the quicker we get out, the better. So it can be a big catalyst and a big reminder if we start to go into it like, okay, transmutation time. That's actually how we deprogram. We have to face it. We got to feel it to heal it and deal with it. Okay, and I'm almost done. So this is the activation of the infinity spiral once that gets going. And Ophiuchus helps, the presence of Ophiuchus now is helping to activate this part of us. And then we start to move into the higher levels of sacred marriage within ourselves. And that relates to the 6th and 7th chakra. That's level 1, building wings. Level 2, crystal lotus heart. That's the 8th and 9th, where the infinity spiral. And Hyros Gamos, the Christos hydroplasmic light, 10, 11, 12, that's the avatar conscious, those higher strands of DNA. So as you see, it's a love story of the true love story of the Christ Sophia, the true authentic relationship of the inner masculine and feminine. And again, if you're in same-sex relationships, that doesn't get in the way. So it's not limited to, gender. It has to be male, female. That's not true at all. But it just has to do with the energy flow and our own internal balance. And so this is a love story. Our junk DNA holds a love story of the true Christ Sophia, divine union. And when we find that within ourselves, we tend to find soulmates and we're on the path to finding our twin flame. But, we got to be careful. So there's a lot of attack when we start to get to those stages of development. And that's why we get there a lot and then we get targeted or attacked. And then we go back to like feeling like defeated. And sometimes people give up and they're like, man, the spiritual path isn't working out for me. But you got to remember, we're breaking a barrier, and we just got to keep breathing through it. And, you know, your friends might turn on you. Things might get really, really weird. If you're not with strong people who are not fully self-aware, they can be used as a weapon against you. So yeah, it's pretty disturbing. But we're the ultimate free energy technology. And disclosure, yeah, I mean, all this stuff needs to be known. All the stuff that, you know, I mentioned, and far more than what I was able to bring into the presentation, you know, and you can just kind of skim through that. And, you know, and Nasara is a great possibility. And that's going to absolutely just be huge to have that reset, because that's the most vampiric thing on the planet, is the money system. And again, every time we're about to initiate, they try and sabotage it, and it stunts our growth, and then we give our power away. It's okay to have all these, you know, symptoms or ascension symptoms or negative feelings. But if we don't recognize it's a part of a greater initiation, we freak out, right? So the awakening process is uncomfortable. There's panic attacks, PTSD can come up, nervous breakdowns as we down, you know, but it's awakening, you know, the true essence of Uranus, which is all about, you know, these are outer planets that are the initiatory planets that are helping us to wake up. Neptune connects with the creative imagination, Pluto transformation. But if we're in the shadow side of it, if we're not allowing ourselves to move through the transformation like we're required to do as a collective, people have suicidal thoughts, there's heavy energy, there's darkness, not wanting to get out of the cocoon, not, you know, so we have to know that those are stages. There's no negative thing we ever experience that is a permanent thing, as we see with the scale. That's just dropping into something temporarily. We got to keep breathing through it and breathing through it. Because if we don't, our immune system gets lowered. We get hijacked. Our energies get siphoned. We feel hopeless, lost, and confused. We're in survival. We're reactive. We're ungrounded. We can't think. We need to increase our spiritual immune system, heal our mental and emotional bodies, and the physical will follow. And hopefully true medical leaders will become more, you know, known. So we're healing our damaged DNA. There's all sorts of things happening this year. And I try and put out, you know, videos. I have subscribers too, and I, you know, do weekly things to keep people aware of like what's happening in the astrology. And this is sort of some things coming up. But this is like way far away. So if you guys want to join my newsletter or anything like that, you'll get updates. But this is the full spectrum of frequency, 15 chakras. And there's even more than that that aren't as big as these main ones, right? So look, you know, number 15 is beneath the earth. Number 14 is above the head, but number 13 is below the feet. That's the aqua ray, the mother, the gold, and the magenta, and going all the way down to the base chakra. When we begin to bring in these galactic energies into our lower chakras, it changes the frequency of them. It begins to change the way the chakras work, and it begins to open up the stargate. So we're a huge part of this process. And this is the true tree of life grid. As you see, it's broken up into different harmonic universes and different densities. And you'll see the 3 founder flames at the top that I've been talking about, the aquamarine, pale gold, and magenta. It's a really good thing to look at, meditate upon, maybe even get a picture of and put on your wall. I think I'm going to do that today and just look at it. And this is our blueprint and the full picture. So this is like the final slide. So Venus as a planet is a portion, is the heart energy. It's the heart energy of the mother that has formed a perfect pentagram in the sky to correct the inversion and the inverted pentagram and all that means, right? So she hasn't been able to be in the earth until recently, but while she wasn't able to be in the earth, she manifested her consciousness and intent through the planet Venus, which has formed a perfect pentagram in the sky, forming a sacred geometry of a rose. And because we all have Venus in our charts and we're all connected to Venus, this is a part of our greater expression and our higher self and the divine mother that exists within all, that we have been doing repair work. And now we're ready to be grounded and anchored on this earth. All the parasites and all these dark forces are going to be like, they're not going to be able to stay here. It's like they're getting kicked out. It's like out of here. And it can't get any worse than what it's been in our history. The mother is here and we're all holding this force together and we're doing this together. And this is what it should be, you know, connecting with spirit. The spirit always keeps the elements purified, our inner elements and our DNA. And that constant circulation is what keeps us healthy, what keeps us strong, what keeps us protected. And yeah, when the supragalactic chakra is activated, you know, the goddess energy is really awoken, and it awakens in men. It's not just for women. I mean, this is, you know, part of the greater blueprint. This is the final slide. Finally, the physical being is becoming aware that they are the consciousness tool that can open stargates and thereby direct this consciousness power. It is all internally accessed. Being self-aware and consciously creative is the challenge, and the greatest disclosure I am seeing is that our connection to this earth, mother, spirit and unity consciousness and sacred union is the great DNA activator and liberator of all. And so there is a lot of goodness that's out there, and we have to constantly remind ourselves because it's pretty dark out there. But anyway, thank you so much. And I'll stop the share. And thanks everybody for your patience with, oh my God, I ended at 1:11, exactly 2 hours. Okay, so I guess
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Laura.